onslaught better than we usually do.
Alright, chums up.
Ready, guys?
Let's do this. Leroy Jenkins!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
Hey everybody, and welcome to LFR, the casual podcast for casual players of World of Warcraft, where we make the lore of Warcraft more accessible than Quel'Thalas, if you know the right people. We're your hosts, Sarith
and Dracoris. LFR usually stands for looking for raid, but today it stands for Lordaeron fucking ruined. Thank you for joining us for another dive into an aspect of lore in the World of Warcraft. Today is part 3 of what's looking like a 4-part series, looking into one of Warcraft lore's most popular characters, Prince Arthas, also known as the Lich King. Last time we talked about his relationship with Jaina, their discovery of a magical plague that turned the citizens of Lordaeron into undead. We met Kel'Thuzad and Mal'Ganis, briefly, and Arthas took the fateful decision to cull the city of Stratholme, killing every man, woman and child within its walls. Yay! We left the story with Jaina and Uther discovering that Arthas had commandeered the entire Lordaeron fleet and taken them to Northrend to hunt for Mal'Ganis. This week we're going to talk about where things went from there. It's funny how a trip north can end with things going so far south. Metaphorically. Anyway, before we get into that...
You love me! You really love me!
So we did have no new reviews this week, but if you like the show, and we can only assume you do if you're still listening, please do take the time to leave us a review either on your preferred podcast platform or on the Warcraft radio directory. Or just send us an email or DM. Everything helps. And then we also have our amazing patrons, especially our AOTC patrons, who will be getting their names read out each and every episode until they decide we aren't worth their money anymore. So we got a big thank you to Mud, Sky Shrouder, Anna, Gershom, and Discordian Kitty. If you want to join them and our other patrons, please do sign up at patreon.com/LFRWowcast. So in the news this week, patch 9.1.5 is out now. In America. And it's up in Europe now too, right?
Yeah, it is, as of yesterday. No, today. Yeah, today. So you guys are the unofficial beta test for Europe. So you guys get it a day early, and then you guys work out all the bugs and have a whole day of scheduled maintenance, and then we're fine. So no, it all dropped for us at like 7 o'clock this morning, my time, I think. And as far as I'm aware, there's been no maintenance or anything, which is fantastic. So thank you, Americans.
That's always the joke in the Race for World First, is that Limit is the beta testers for Method and Echo.
Yeah. I get it, and it's true. I mean, on the one hand, I would love, a global release for things, because on the days when there is no scheduled maintenance, when there are no issues, we do miss out, and everything gets spoiled on Twitter before I get a chance to see it. But then on a day like yesterday, where you guys have maintenance for most of the day, I'm pretty glad things are the way they are.
Other things in the news: 3 of the 4 ABK employees' demands have been met since our last episode. Mm-hmm. I know one of those was the end of forced arbitration, which I think is a big deal. And I don't have it in front of me, but I know 2 of their other demands were met, and I didn't pull up the Twitter, so I don't remember what they are.
It's okay. I haven't pulled them up either, but what they were, one of them is to do with committing to basically greater diversity in the workforce, and that they've committed to that with what looks like a pretty solid plan, to be fair. There's the forced arbitration thing, and then I'm struggling what the other one is too. But the one that they haven't met yet is the involving of a third party for the reviews and what have you, a neutral third party, because as far as we know, Wilmer Hale is still the plan for that.
Right.
But that said, the old song is 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I think 3 out of 4 is better than 2 out of 3. So at the moment, I'm cautiously optimistic. That said, I did log on to Twitter this morning to see that Jen O'Neill has stepped down from her position at Blizzard as one of the co-leads, and will in fact be leaving Blizzard entirely by the end of the year. So that leaves a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I was reading a bit about it, and I know she's leaving to work with, and I'm going to space on it, it was 4-letter.
It's essentially
but
it's essentially
for
a
women in
charity,
gaming,
non-profit,
and
yeah.
Blizzard is doing $1 million donation along with her going over there to kind of help them, make some more of an impact. So
Yeah. I
would have liked her to stay, but if this is where she feels like she can make the biggest impact, then I hope it goes well.
We wouldn't want to slander or libel anybody on this podcast, so I'm going to be very careful with what I say here, but it would not be unreasonable for somebody to assume that her leaving and that $1 million thing is part of some sort of negotiation that's been reached on her way out the door. And it's a shame to me that she doesn't feel that whatever change she wants to see in the gaming industry is best affected by staying at Blizzard. That, to me, says something either about her or about Blizzard, and I lean towards the latter, and that worries me a little. I'd love to be wrong about that. If by some incredible coincidence or quirk of fate, anyone who actually knows Jen O'Neill ever hears this, we would love the chance for a chat, because I would love to know what's really going on there. However, I would be willing to bet there are at least 2 non-disclosure agreements involved. So,
oh yeah,
we're never going to find out, is the truth. But
I'm trying to take the optimistic view that,
of course,
she feels like Blizzard is on the right track, but the gaming industry still isn't.
Well,
she feels she
that's
have a wider
essentially what she said.
Influence.
That's essentially what she said in her press release. However, those things are all bullshit.
That's true.
Someone just said on Twitter actually that JOB's press release when he left sounded like it was written by 3 corporate lawyers in a trench coat. This one doesn't sound like that particularly, but I guarantee you it still was. Yeah, honestly, we were planning on recording this episode last week, and it would have been an entirely good news section, which would have been nice. And then this morning the news breaks about Jen O'Neill, which does put a little bit of a damper on it all. But what I will say is, I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen it yet to go and find Bobby Kotick's letter to staff that went out when these employee demands were addressed, because it is a good read. And actually he has committed to a lot of fairly solid things there, and as long as those things are followed through on and actually happen, I think I'm pretty vindicated in what I said back on our podcast on our lawsuit episode, which was that I'm not saying Bobby Kotick is a good person or an angel by any stretch, we don't know, but he's not the problem at Blizzard. And I think he's taking the right steps here, which is great. He's also cut his salary to something that I did a currency conversion and realised that as of the end of January, I'm going to be getting paid more than Bobby Kotick, so that feels nice.
But you don't have all the stock holdings and stuff.
No, nor does he. It's included. In terms of
but
what
he still has everything.
Yeah, but in terms of what he's going to get next year.
Yeah,
and they were great pains to.
Yeah, I know his
out,
overall compensation went down to like $68,000.
62,000 in total.
So,
and not in real money, in American money, not real money, American money.
Basically, for the Americans, that's like a store manager at a McDonald's.
Yeah, essentially.
But we should probably talk about the lore.
Suppose we should.
And how is education supposed to make me feel smarter? Besides, every time I learn something new, it pushes some old stuff out of my brain.
So as you all know, most weeks I ask my partner Lou what she knows about the topic at hand. This week, honestly, I wimped out and didn't ask. I know, I failed you all. In my defence, our son has been off school with tonsillitis. We've had several birthdays to celebrate, and it's just been a pretty disrupted week. I'm also fairly confident she was going to throw something at me if I asked her about Arthas again.
Yeah, and if you had asked her on her actual birthday, which was yesterday, happy birthday, Lou, then I'm pretty sure she would have been justified in that murder.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been here today. So, look, after the last couple of episodes, we know who Arthas was as a kid and as a young adult. What we don't know is how he went from the shining golden prince of Lordaeron, albeit a bit of an arsehole, to the Lich King. So, let's find out.
A small sacrifice for the greater good.
So, we're up to chapter 14 of the book, The Rise of the Lich King, and we start off with Arthas in Northrend with his men. There's a really interesting thing that Christy Golden does here. She starts off with Arthas telling us that, all in all, Northrend was more pleasant than he expected. Then we hear one of his captains complaining about how it's a light-forsaken land where you can barely see the sun and the wind cuts you to the bone. The man then comments that Arthas isn't even shaking. Arthas realises that the man's right and is kind of vaguely surprised to realise it, but shrugs it off. And this kind of shows that Arthas is already not himself. You know, he's becoming attuned to whatever the fuck is going on in Northrend. So this captain asks if Arthas is alright, and Arthas ignores him, asking for an update on his forces. When the captain starts to tell him about the ships that didn't make it, Arthas cuts him off and tells him to start setting up defences. And Arthas' monologue makes it very clear that he's only doing this to shut the guy up and keep him busy. This is a far cry from the young boy who everyone says cared so much about his people and his men. You know, Uther talks to Jaina in the last chapter about how the reason the men love Arthas is because he cares for them. Well, right here, Arthas doesn't give a flying fuck about any of his men. You know, he doesn't even care that some of his boats didn't make it to Northrend. Arthas then does some angsting about Jaina, standard, and then goes to sleep and dreams about Invincible.
Also standard.
No, really, like, he has a whole dream. He relives Invincible's death, only this time when he stabs Invincible in the heart, he notes that he is holding a bigger sword. Compensating for something, Arthas? He's holding this huge two-handed sword, beautifully fashioned, with runes glowing along its length and cold blue mist wafting from it. And when he withdraws the sword, Invincible is alive again, stronger than ever before. Arthas woke up sobbing with joy, with tears in his eyes. Surely this was an omen. Yeah, sure, okay. 2 weeks later, all they found were small pockets of undead. No sign of Mal'Ganis. One day, following a scouting report about a cluster of undead, they find the undead already dismembered. Then they come under fire. Not clear whether this is like guns or bow and arrows or what, but it turns out that they were being attacked by Muradin Bronzebeard and a bunch of dwarves.
Guns.
Oh, you would assume guns, yeah. But, like, how is no one dead?
Maybe mortars.
How did no one die? So once they identify each other, the two forces join up. Arthas and Muradin have a little catch-up, and it turns out that Muradin is in Northrend on Explorers League business, looking for a rune blade called Frostmourne. Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, that sounds ominous. Time passes, and Arthas and Muradin and their men search for Mal'Ganis and Frostmourne. Until one day, Arthas and Muradin return to camp and realise that all of the men Arthas posted as guards are gone. Turns out, King Tyrannus had recalled the fleet at Uther's urging, so it was time to go home. Arthas, not a big fan of doing what he's told generally, decides not to go along with that plan. He drags Muradin along with him and embarks on the most batshit insane plan I think I've ever heard of. He hires a bunch of mercenaries to burn his own ships so that his men would have no way of returning home. Then he tells his men that the mercenaries stole and burnt the ships and has them all killed. Fucking cold, Arthas.
Is that another pun?
I mean, yes and no, because it probably wasn't cold because all the ships were on fire. But then also it was cold because it was Northrend. I don't know. But I mean, we know Arthas isn't feeling the cold. I don't think he's feeling anything at this point. So we move on to the next chapter here, chapter 15, and Muradin, unsurprisingly, wants to have a wee chat with Arthas. A wee chat. He berates him for being a dickbag, but also admits that he can't judge too harshly because he wasn't there for Stratholme and doesn't know what Arthas has been through. That said, he makes it clear that he does know exactly what Arthas has done. Some of his men have been talking a little bit too much when they're drinking, I think. While they're talking, Mal'Ganis arrives and starts killing people while monologuing. Gotta love dreadlords. Muradin admits that he actually knows where Frostmourne is and has known for a while, but hasn't told Arthas because he had doubts about him. Arthas convinces Muradin, and the two go to find Frostmourne, which turns out to be in a big glowy blue ice cave. The glow makes Arthas think, for the third time, about the way that his hammer doesn't glow anymore. He doesn't connect the dots there, though. He basically just seems to think he's got a defective hammer or something.
Is that a pun?
It wasn't intended to be, but I can see how it could. Arthas is kind of a blunt instrument. So when they find Frostmourne, it's caught in this, like, it's described as a hovering, jagged chunk of ice, guarded by elemental spirits. It was, of course, the sword from Arthas' dream. As he approached it, one of the spirits tells Arthas to turn away, and says that it isn't trying to protect the sword from him, but the other way around. I'm fairly confident dramatic orchestral music was playing in the background at this point.
It was if you were playing this in Warcraft 3.
I bet it was, yeah. So, Arthas and his men kill the Elemental Guardians, and Arthas goes to grab the sword. Then, Muradin tells him to stop, and Arthas is getting really pissed at this point. Like, I don't think No Nut November is something Arthas would get on very well with, let's put it that way. He does not like delayed gratification. So, yeah, Muradin says that, you know, there's been too much going on here, and that there's something fishier here than the Booty Bay docks. Try saying that 10 times fast. He said it was too easy, and so he reads the inscription on the dais, which is written in Kalimag, the elemental language. And it says, "Whosoever shall lift this hammer, if he be worthy, will have the power of Thor." No, that's not right. No, it says, "Whosoever takes up this blade shall wield power eternal. Just as the blade rends flesh, so must power scar the spirit." Arthas and Muradin argue. Arthas wants the sword. Muradin thinks they should leave. Look, we all know where this is fucking going. Muradin says, "Arthas, I taught you to fight. I wanted to help you be a good warrior as well as a good king. But part of being a good warrior is picking which battles to fight and which weapons to fight with. And that's a weapon you'll ne'er want to be putting in your arsenal." Now, I wouldn't want to guess about what Arthas puts in whose arsenal, because he's very obsessed. He's very obsessed with horses. That's all I'm saying. So Arthas ignores Muradin and says, "I call out to the spirits of this place. Whatever you be, good or evil or neither or both." Like, spoiler alert, they're evil. "I can feel you here. I know you're listening. I'm ready. I understand, and I tell you now that I will give anything or pay any price if only you will help me save my people." Then bad shit happens. The price that needs to be paid isn't anything Arthas needs to pay. It's fucking Muradin. The ice around the sword shatters. Muradin is impaled on a big spike of ice. He's not dead at this point, but he appears to be dying. And Arthas thinks about picking up the sword, and then he notes a glow around his hand. The light is acting through him, and basically he interprets this as the light telling him to heal Muradin. He could heal Muradin now if he wanted to. But he chooses not to. He chooses to pick up the sword instead and leave. And he leaves Muradin to die in that cave. We will later find out that that is not Muradin's fate, but for a very long time people thought it was. We then move on to chapter 16, and this one's big. Really fucking big. Arthas meets Morganis again. Said. Not about Arthas, though. That's why he needs a bigger rune blade. So Arthas meets up with Morganis again. He hears this whispering voice in his head, and Morganis tells him it's the voice of the Dark Lord. So obviously Arthas listens to Voldemort. Can we say that? No. The Lich King, or Ner'zhul, or the Jailer, or whoever the fuck it is. The voice of Frostmourne. And he kills Morganis with Frostmourne. And there's a whole moment where Morganis is like, "Mwahaha, you know, my master is whispering to you, Mwahaha." And Arthas is like, "Yeah, and he's telling me to kill you." And Morganis is like, "No." And then, yeah, that's what happens. So Arthas kills Morganis with Frostmourne and says, "It is finished." Then, instead of returning home like a sensible person, he listens to the talking sword, which says, "This part of your journey, yes, young prince. But there is more, so much power that could be yours, so much knowledge and control." If Arthas gave a flying fuck about his people, why would he be bothered about power and control at this point? He's killed the Dreadlord, he's stopped the plague. Go home, dude. No. Arthas remembered Muradin's reading of the inscription. His hand went to his heart without realising it, and he realises that this blade is part of him now and he's part of it. The snowstorm's getting worse, and he realises that he's not cold at all. So he straightens up, holding Frostmourne, looks down at the demon at his feet, and says that Frostmourne is right. There's more, so much more, and then Arthas runs away into the icy cold night. Now here's something really cool. nobody actually knows exactly what happens next. There are paragraphs and paragraphs written in blogs and forums. There have been comments made by devs. Some of the bigger ones were made by Alex Afrasiabi, and I'm pretty sure everything he says is non-canon now. But look, the truth is we don't really know exactly what happened next for Arthas. We might know more depending on whether Arthas crops up later in Shadowlands, and what he tells us if he does. But the book just jumps forward here to Arthas' return home. Now, most of this next bit is in a Warcraft 3 cutscene that you can find on YouTube very easily. But I'm just going to summarise. Arthas comes home to a full-on hero's welcome. A parade, rose petals falling from the sky. In advance, Arthas had sent a letter to his father which said, "I would speak with you in private and tell you of the things I've learned and seen. You have, I'm certain, spoken with Jaina and Uther, and I can imagine what they've said to try and turn you against me. I assure you I have only done what I believe to be the greatest good for the citizens of Lordaeron." Bullshit. "In the end, I have destroyed the one who begun this plague upon our people, and I return home victorious, eager to begin a new era for our kingdom." Arthas, you should have been a lawyer because that's technically correct. So Arthas goes straight to this private audience with Tyrannus and kills him. There's a sounder that we're going to put in here. He then unleashes the fucking scourge on Lordaeron. Like, mindless undead. This is the guy who apparently cared so much about his people that that's why he went north in the first place. Unleashes the fucking scourge on Lordaeron. But enough about that. While Arthas is commanding the undead to kill everyone he's ever known and loved, he's focused on the important things in life. He's off to the stables. Oh, yes.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh, yeah. Oh, delayed gratification for Arthas? Hell no. He goes to Invincible's grave.
He's fucking that horse right now.
He goes to Invincible's grave, and he fucking raises him using Frostmourne. The last line of this chapter isn't the iconic one that ends the Warcraft 3 cinematic. You know, "This kingdom shall fall, and from the ashes shall arise a new order that will shake the very foundation of this world." No. The last line? Invincible. Dude's obsessed.
Arthas is the Mr. Hands of Azeroth. If you don't know Mr. Hands, don't Google it. Just trust me.
See, what I'm thinking is, like, have you guys seen, I'm sure you've seen, these, like, the maps that come out every now and then showing the most searched for porn in different places? Like, the map of the US with each state with a word in it based on what's most searched, right? Like, different fetishes and things. I'm absolutely...
to always be fucking step-siblings, and it's weird.
And I'm absolutely fucking certain that if you did that map for the Warcraft world, Lordaeron is just horses.
And it's just Arthas.
And it's just Arthas, yeah. Now, look, we're going to go less chapter by chapter for the rest of this, because a lot of the stuff that follows in the book is quite Sylvanas-centric. And I don't want to fall into the trap of telling her story here instead.
No, we'll need 7 episodes for that one.
Dude, seriously. But a few days later, Arthas meets Tichondrius the Darkener, a dreadlord like Mal'Ganis. Thinking that the dreadlord is Mal'Ganis, because Arthas is a massive racist and they all look the same to him, Arthas immediately threatens him, only to discover that actually, you know, it's a different person. And Tichondrius had actually come to congratulate Arthas. Arthas claims to feel no remorse for any of his actions, although he then hears a whisper that calls him a liar, and it is not coming from Frostmourne. Tichondrius then explains that Frostmourne was designed to steal souls, and that Arthas' own soul was the first one it had claimed. This makes me think that Arthas' soul, or a fragment of it, would have been sent to the ossuary in Torghast, and this strengthens my belief about where it is now, but we'll come to that in the next episode, I think. Arthas assembled the members of the Cult of the Damned, who are the necromancers responsible for the plague, that were hiding in Vandamar, and then travelled to Anderhal, where he was to recover the corpse of Kel'Thuzad. Pretty ironic that the guy who killed Kel'Thuzad is now going to try and raise him. So he confronts the paladins guarding the crypt. The paladin in question is Gavinrad the Dire, who had given Arthas his holy warhammer at the induction ceremony into the Silver Hand. Now, in fairness to Arthas, he gives Gavinrad a chance to stand aside and live. Gavinrad's not really having any of that, though. They have some pretty cool banter. His response is, "I can't believe that we ever called you brother. Why Uther ever vouched for you is beyond me. Your betrayal has broken Uther's heart. He would have given his life for yours in a second, and this is how you repay his loyalty. I knew it was a mistake to accept a spoiled prince into our order. You've made a mockery of the Silver Hand. And Arthas' rejoinder is pretty great. He says, no, my brother, when I slay your body and raise it as a servant and make you dance to my tune, that will be a mockery of the Silver Hand. And I read that and I literally thought, oh snap, that was some good shit. Yeah, but it's funny to see that other people did have misgivings about Arthas joining the Silver Hand. The fact that Gavinrad said that it was a mistake to accept a spoiled prince into our order beforehand, by the sound of it. Just goes to show that, Uther might have thought Arthas should be a paladin, but I don't think anybody else did. So, after killing Gavinrad, Arthas recovered the remains of Kel'Thuzad. This brought the necromancer's ghost into being, who then secretly instructed Arthas not to trust the Dreadlords, and Arthas sort of quietly contemplated this for a bit. Now, Kel'Thuzad's remains were really badly decomposed and needed to be taken to the mystical Sunwell in Kel'Thalas to be revived. Tichondrius sends Arthas to recover what he says is a mystical urn that could transport Kel'Thuzad's remains safely. This is Dreadlord bullshit. This is just them fucking with Arthas, right? They tell him it's a magic urn that's the only urn that can carry Kel'Thuzad. Nah. This urn is in the keeping of the Knights of the Silver Hand, for a good reason. Arthas faces...
They needed an urn to make his phylactery, though.
They needed an urn. It didn't need to be a magic urn. They could have just bought a fucking urn from the urn shop. This is them testing Arthas. Because when he fights Uther, he realises that this urn holds the ashes of his father. Right?
And
the Dreadlords tell him that this
Uther's
is
best. Sorry, it gives us Uther's best quote in the game.
Yes, it does.
Where he asks him if he wants to come piss on
them as well. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, why do you want these? Are you going to piss on them as well? But yeah, so Arthas had no idea that this was his father's urn that he was coming to liberate from the Paladins. And there is no indication ever at any point that this urn is magic, other than the fact that the Dreadlords say that they need a magic urn. I'm absolutely positive that this is just the Dreadlords testing Arthas to see how far he's willing to go. And the answer is pretty fucking far. So Arthas and Uther have a big fight. Uther initially has the upper hand and actually manages to knock Frostmourne out of Arthas' hand. As Arthas waits for the killing blow, it says that the sword seems to find its own way back into his hands, and he's granted more power by the Lich King. The battle then turns in Arthas' favour, and Uther, covered in blood from his wounds, falls to one knee and tells Arthas that he hopes there's a special place in hell waiting for him. Arthas replies that they may never know, because he intended to live forever, and then delivers the killing blow. Also, splitting Uther's soul and sending half of him to Bastion, and the other half to the Maw. He then took the urn and blasphemed his father's remains by tipping them out of the urn. The wind blows, and just at the moment that he tips the urn out, the wind blows, and his father's ashes go into his eyes and his mouth and his throat, which is pretty gross.
Yummy.
Yeah, pretty gross, but no less than Arthas deserves, frankly. Arthas then has the remains of Kel'Thuzad placed within the urn. That's another thing as well. I'm not entirely sure how a liquefied skeleton is supposed to fit into an urn that previously held ashes. That's kind of weird. It's not a magic urn. but yeah, Arthas has Kel'Thuzad's remains placed in the urn and begins the long journey to Kel'Thalas. Now, on reaching this elven homeland, Arthas meets heavy resistance from the elves, rallied by Ranger General Sylvanas Windrunner. The thing is, Arthas hadn't been idle on the way there, and he had a fucking massive army at this point. Plague victims, abominations, anyone they walk past on the road on the way there that they just kill and raise as a zombie, but also undead Nerubians. Massive fucking terrifying zombie spider things that have been sent to Arthas' side by the Lich King. The Lich King being this presence that Arthas is now serving. It didn't help that Sylvanas didn't really understand how to fight the undead. Like, people hadn't had to do this before, She wasted a massive surprise attack, shooting arrows at the living cultists that Arthas had with him, killing all of them. Which sounds really badass, until you realise that Arthas could just raise them from the dead, which is what he did. And in doing that, Sylvanas gave away the position of all of her concealed archers and what have you. So like traditional tactics did not work against Arthas' army. Now, as far as the elven dead went, Arthas raised some of them, sure, but others he loaded into catapults and fired as ammunition. Sylvanas had to fall back behind the quote-unquote impenetrable elf gate, which Arthas destroyed easily. Turns out there was an elven mage, Darkandra Thyr, who had turned traitor and sold out the secrets of Kel'Thalas' defences. So at this point, Sylvanas noticed what would become known as the Dead Scar. The ground on which Arthas' army was travelling was dying and withering beneath them, and it still hasn't grown back now in-game.
Nope, and it probably never will, because I think Blizzard has forgotten Quel'Thalas exists.
Oh, don't. I really want them to redo Silvermoon. At the very least, let me fly there, guys. Come on.
Right? That would be such a cool city to fly in.
Like, we don't need the starting zone experience there anymore. You've got Classic for that. Now that Classic's moved into BC, you know? And now we've got Exile's Reach, generally. But yeah, so driving Sylvanas' forces before his undead army, Arthas steadily pushes them back towards Silvermoon. Sylvanas tried blowing up a bridge to stop Arthas, in a pretty cool sequence where you think Sylvanas has got the upper hand, and Arthas is momentarily frustrated because he's like, shit, there's no way to cross this river. Like, I've got no way across. Oh, wait, yes, I have. I've got thousands of fucking zombies. So what Arthas did was just marched a bunch of zombies into the river, and then marched another bunch of zombies over the top of them, and then marched another bunch of zombies over the top of them, until eventually they made it across the river. Arthas kind of viewed it as a bonus that he was fouling the water at the same time. He wouldn't have thought of doing that by himself. Yeah, that was Sylvanas' fault as far as he's concerned. So Arthas thinks about Jaina, again, and then thinks that Sylvanas must have been what reminded him of her. Clearly Arthas likes blondes and is otherwise blind, because that's pretty much all they've got in common.
Right?
Yeah. So eventually Arthas kills Sylvanas. We now know that a chunk of Sylvanas' soul went to the Maw at this point, into the possession of the jailer. The rest of her, however, Arthas raised as a cruel parody of herself, a shrieking banshee under his complete control. For now. So Arthas came to Silvermoon, planning only to use the Sunwell to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. It was genuinely not his intention to subjugate and murder the elven population, nor to destroy their home. But he certainly did it, and to be fair, he did it with a massive grin on his face the whole time, so, you know. But he genuinely felt that all of this was Sylvanas' fault, and that if she just stepped aside, he could have just gone in, used the Sunwell, and left. That said, you know, Morally Grey referred to the use of the Sunwell as essentially shitting in the pool, and that is basically what would have happened. Like, it would have trashed Silvermoon regardless, I think. And so I think this is a really good example of something that we see with Arthas throughout the story, which is that he is deluded. You know, pretty much constantly deluded. He believes that it's Sylvanas' fault all the elves die, when actually he was planning on going and shitting in their magic pool, which would have killed a bunch of them anyway. You know, he believes that Gavinrad could have stood to one side and allowed him to get Kel'Thuzad's remains. Well, I mean, he wouldn't have done that. You know, he's a fucking paladin. But there are so many moments where Arthas believes other people are responsible for his own bullshit. And it does continue.
Bit of a sociopath.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Just a little, but...
Just a little bit.
Well, more than a little, but...
Yeah. So, Arthas also faced Anasterion Sunstrider, the High King of Kel'Thalas, and the father to Kael'thas Sunstrider, and killed him. We read about this battle from Sylvanas' perspective, and I found it hilarious that when Anasterion chopped through the legs of Arthas' mount, Sylvanas thought that it was an odd battle cry that Arthas shouted, "Invincible!" given that he was losing. Obviously Sylvanas didn't know that it was the horse's name, so I thought that was quite funny.
I just love that the only thing that affected him emotionally during all this was his undead horse being attacked.
Yeah, he doesn't care about the thousands of people dying all around him. You know, the fact that he's fouling an area of incredible natural beauty. You know, the fact that he's killing the father of someone he knew. No, not at all. He's just bothered that his undead horse, that could heal itself very easily, got a boo-boo. You know? So Arthas then uses the Sunwell to bring Kel'Thuzad back as an undead lich. Then Arthas kills Darkandra Thyr, the man who betrayed Silvermoon to him. Remember, everyone, snitches get stitches, and they don't become liches. After after all this, Arthas then learns a little bit more about the background of what's actually going on. The kind of thing that you maybe would have wanted to learn before you destroyed a capital city. He finds out about the Burning Legion. So he learns from Kel'Thuzad that the Dreadlords are the jailers of the Lich King and work for the Burning Legion. Yeah, sure they do. All that has happened so far in Arthas' life was to pave the way for the Legion's assault on Azeroth. Now, we take all of this with a pinch of salt because we now know that the Dreadlords work for Denathrius, who works for the jailer. Kel'Thuzad also works for the jailer. It's therefore incredibly likely that there's some sort of death-aligned plan here that is honestly kind of hard to puzzle out. Because it's a retcon, but, like, maybe it's supposed to be a Splinter Cell type thing. Maybe Kel'Thuzad and the Dreadlords don't know that each other are both on Team Jailer, really? I don't know.
I wonder when Kel'Thuzad joined Team Jailer, because I feel like it was probably after Ner'zhul, when he just had all that time while Arthas was sitting on the chair doing nothing.
I think there's a lot of confusion, generally, over how much of the Lich King... pardon me... quote-unquote Lich King that, Arthas and Kel'Thuzad deal with, how much of that is the jailer and how much of that is Ner'zhul. Mm-hmm. Because, the reason that the jailer is pissed with Ner'zhul is because he fights back, isn't it, essentially? And so I think some of the stuff that, that Arthas hears is probably Ner'zhul, and I think some of it is probably the jailer, or the presence, or whatever, So I think Kel'Thuzad is on Team Jailer from before he dies, probably. But it's hard to be sure. But yes, my best guess at the moment is that Kel'Thuzad and the Dreadlords were both working for the Jailer here and just didn't realise that each other were. And so they had a lot of, unnecessary conflict because Kel'Thuzad thought the Dreadlords were genuinely working for the Burning Legion when, they weren't. So, anywho, Arthas and co go to Dalaran to steal the Book of Medivh so that they could use it to bring Archimonde through to Azeroth. This plan works, and Archie is summoned, whereupon he says that the Lich King is not needed anymore and places Tichondrius in charge of the Scourge. The Scourge being the collective noun for all this massive undead army. So Arthas gets very butthurt about this because, he doesn't like not being in charge of things. But Kel'Thuzad assures him that this is all within the Lich King's plan. Arthas then starts fucking with the Legion on the down low, on the Lich King's orders. Pardon me. The Legion headed to Kalimdor, their plan being to consume Nordrassil and the second Well of Eternity created by Illidan Stormrage. Speaking of Illidan, this is where Arthas' path crosses with his. They meet and fight. They're too evenly matched, and so they call it a draw. Arthas then enlists Illidan to steal the Skull of Gul'dan from Tichondrius. Archimonde then gets his ass kicked by some Night Elves, amongst others, and Arthas goes home to Lordaeron with the Scourge. Archimonde left Dreadlords behind in the ruined palace gardens of Lordaeron to ensure that the nation remained under the Legion's control. These Dreadlords didn't feel it when Archimonde died, so they carried on doing their duty. It's quite hilarious because some people did know. Sylvanas knew, and Kel'Thuzad knew, and the two of them are there muttering about it, with the Dreadlords 10 feet away having no idea that this has all happened. So several months later this changes, when Arthas returns to reclaim his throne. He threatens the Dreadlords, who immediately flee, and then he calls Sylvanas and Kel'Thuzad to his side. Then Arthas has a seizure, like a full-on painful, doubled over kind of thing, and he feels the Lich King calling out to him. Now, at this point, Arthas learns that the Lich King's power has dwindled to the point that Sylvanas is no longer completely under his control. Let's put it this way. He learns that the Lich King's power has dwindled. He doesn't realise that Sylvanas is no longer under his control. Sylvanas finds that she can do things, like she can flex her fingers and she can move independently. All stuff that she couldn't do before. Arthas knows that the Lich King's power has dwindled, but doesn't realise he's lost control of Sylvanas. So in secret, she attends a meeting with 3 Dreadlords. And they tell her that the Lich King's power is waning, etc., etc., and the time has come to claim her vengeance. Arthas then gets ambushed by the Dreadlords in the capital city, and is forced to fight his way through their forces. He ends up being rescued by 2 Banshees, who tell him that Sylvanas has sent them to help him escape. And there's a whole inner monologue thing where Arthas is like, oh, I guess Sylvanas has gotten over this whole me killing her and raising her as a wretched creature of despair thing, you know. Oh, I'm so glad that Sylvanas has seen the light and is on my side. And he's just so fucking delusional. But then, as they near an empty spot in the forest, Arthas receives another vision from the Lich King, who tells him that he's been betrayed. This gives him just enough warning that when Sylvanas appears and shoots him with a paralysing arrow, you know, he doesn't get completely fucked up. Kel'Thuzad steps in and chases Sylvanas off at the last moment, but the Lich King's mental cries are piercing Arthas' mind here. He's being told to return to Northrend, because demonic forces, later revealed to actually be Illidan and the Naga, so not particularly demonic, were working to destroy the Frozen Throne, and to end the self-proclaimed Lich King's reign over Northrend. Immediately, Arthas prepares his fleet, and I'd love to know exactly what makes up the fleet of an undead army.
Well, he took over Lordaeron. I'm sure he could grab those ships.
Yeah, but he had all those burnt in Northrend, didn't he?
Yeah, they probably had more.
And I just wonder how the boat, can zombies work a boat? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, he prepares a fleet.
Yes, we've done it in game. We've sailed with the undead on the Horde side in Legion.
Oh, okay, I don't play Horde. So, okay, so, but that's like the free-willed undead, right? The Forsaken.
But I'm assuming if the Forsaken can do it, Arthas can be like, hey, you were a sailor, fucking make my boat work.
I mean, maybe, but what I'm thinking is, they haven't got any free will, have they, these undead? So it must be like working a puppet. And, I could probably steer a wheel or, work a rudder. I don't know how boats work, full disclosure. But, I could probably do the physical action required for some of it. But could I use a string puppet to do it? Not sure. Anyway, however it works, whatever kind of undead Uber Arthas takes, he makes it to Northrend with his fleet, and really irks me that does, and leaves Kel'Thuzad behind to watch over Lordaeron. There's a whole thing about how Arthas believes Kel'Thuzad to be completely obedient to him and adoring of him and all this, and it's great because we never get Kel'Thuzad's perspective on any of it. So all we have is Arthas saying that Kel'Thuzad loves him, but Arthas thinks everyone loves him. So anyway, 3 weeks later, Arthas lands on the familiar coast of Northrend and finds himself being attacked by a bunch of blood elves, led by Kel'Thas, hungry for vengeance at their kingdom's destruction. Arthas is unexpectedly saved by a large crypt lord. Now, if you've played the game, you'll probably have seen crypt lords, but they're fucked up. They're like creepy spider-person demon things. And he introduces himself as Anubarak, the former king of Ajol Nerub.
What a noob.
Yeah. A Nerub, if you will. So Kel'Thas warns as he leaves that although his preliminary scouting force may have fallen, the main army would not be so easily stopped. And then Kel'Thas teleports away. What I like to think of as the na-na-na-na-na battle strategy. Arthas worries that Kel'Thas might be right, and that he would never reach Icecrown Citadel before Illidan did. But Anubarak thought differently. Anubarak basically convinces Arthas to go underground. So they do. They go underground and they make their way through, the spider warren that is Ajol Nerub, essentially. While they're down there, by the way, they wake up the Faceless by accident, which we touched on briefly in our bonus episode with Lex. So good going there, Arthas.
Yes, Lex, the Faceless.
Ooh.
Faceless. Go on.
So yeah, when they finally reached the surface, they immediately had to contend with Illidan's forces. Vash's Naga and Kael's Blood Elves were there too. And it's a big fuck-off Royal Rumble type thing, essentially. But with Anubarak's help, Arthas fights his way through and magically activates the Ice Crown obelisks around the glacier, opening the doors to the Frozen Throne. But Illidan is waiting for him. Arthas warns him to leave. Illidan won't. There's a little bit of banter about the fact that Illidan ate the skull of Gul'dan and now looks all demony. But they have a scrap, and after a short but intense battle, Illidan makes a mistake, Arthas takes advantage, and slices Illidan's chest open with Frostmourne. Illidan collapses in the snow, and Arthas turns towards the doors of Icecrown. He enters the hollow glacier and beholds a winding pinnacle chained to the ice. as he makes his way up those stairs, the voices of those he had forsaken flood through his mind. He hears Muradin, Uther, and Jaina, but he ignores them, continuing his ascent. He probably also hears Invincible, because all these people are telling him no, right? And what do horses say? Nay.
Hey.
But look,
damn it.
But yeah, he finally reaches the pinnacle, and, before him he sees an icy cask. Inside is a suit of armour, arranged as if seated on a massive throne. And now only one voice speaks to him. The rasping whisper of the Lich King / the Jailer / Najul. I'm pretty sure it's Najul at this point, but really getting confusing. It says, "Return the blade, complete the circle, release me from this prison." So Arthas does. He uses Frostmourne to break the ice. I personally tend to use things like, how much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice. That's my personal icebreaker, but Arthas chooses to use Frostmourne, and I can respect that. So yeah, the ice shatters, the armour explodes, and with Nazul's helm at his feet, Arthas leans forward, picks it up, and puts the stupid fucking Helm of Domination on his head. And the two of them then speak together and say, "Now we are one."
You know what's interesting to me about the Helm of Domination?
Mm-hmm.
Is it was crafted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it perfectly fits Arthas's head, and then it perfectly fits Bolvar's head. Like, is this just a magic, one-size-fits-all helmet?
That's just how loot works in game generally, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that the collar of, oh god, what's that dragon called in Goriona, right? Goriona, the big purple dragon. I'm pretty sure her collar shouldn't fit everybody as a belt perfectly, and yet it does, right? Like, my male Draenei and a female Blood Elf should not be able to wear the same belt, and yet they can.
That's what tailors and blacksmiths are for, and leather workers.
That would make sense if you had to go to any of those people at any point in time ever, but we don't. Any more than Arthas does.
Hey,
here.
legendaries are a thing now. Tailors and blacksmiths and leather workers are somewhat relevant.
Fair. But look, one thing I will say, and actually partially an answer to your question, if the Dreadlords and Kel'Thuzad aren't full of shit, I know that they probably are, but if we assume that anything they say is accurate, right, they tell Arthas on multiple occasions that he was chosen to be the champion. Like, Frostmourne was placed in his path. All of this stuff was supposed to happen to Arthas. It's entirely possible that, the Helm of Domination was crafted to fit Arthas. And I mean, one human male paladin and another aren't too dissimilar. Like, it fitting Bolvar isn't a massive stretch. Especially when you consider that, actually, think about it. By the time Bolvar puts that helm on, he has been crispy fried by Alexstrasza, right? He has lost all of his hair. He has lost a hell of a lot of skin. And he probably is so uncomfortable that it wouldn't matter if the helmet's a bit tight or a bit loose.
Yeah, his skull may also have some of the consistency of Play-Doh at that point.
Yeah, but like the helmet not fitting him perfectly is probably the least of Bolvar's troubles, honestly.
Putting a giant burn scar probably doesn't feel great.
What would have stretched belief more, actually, would have been if Sylvanas had put it on instead of breaking it. Because Sylvanas' head is definitely smaller than Arthas and Bolvar's.
And the ears would have just rolled around in there and made it work.
Plate helmets.
Or they would have just clipped through like they do on all of our models.
Oh god, I want to see that. I want to see a scenario. I want to see a what-if type thing, right? With a cinematic where Sylvanas puts the helm on and all the orchestral music is blaring, right? The orchestral music's blaring as she places the helm slowly on her head, and then 2 seconds later, her eyebrows clip out of the front and her ears clip out of the back.
Jin and Ellie, are you listening? We're giving you content for your next What If episode.
That's what I want to see. But yeah, so that finishes with "Now we are one," and that leaves us at the end of Arthas' story until the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, which I think is a pretty good place to leave it. So what we're going to hit next week is we're going to hit the Wrath of the Lich King story and what we know about Arthas in the Shadowlands. Spoiler alert, not a lot. And that's going to be where we are. And then there'll probably be time for a bit of discussion about the character generally. So that's what you can all expect for the next episode of LFR.
That's interesting. Sorry, this has nothing to do with LFR. Well, a little bit, because it's Warcraft, but I just got the news blurb on Discord that they removed Valor and Conquest caps with 915.
I can honestly tell you that I've never earned any Valor or Conquest, and therefore do not know what the cap was.
Yeah, no, I've never gotten close to cap, but I know for some people that'll probably be... Because you can use Valor and Conquest to gear up your alts now.
Yeah. I think, is Valor the one you get from just, like, killing shit in world PvP?
No, that would probably... Valor you get from, like, Mythic Plus.
Oh, okay.
Conquest is PvP.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, who knows? Oh, is it Honor? Am I thinking of Honor?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Honor is like
what I'm
the
thinking.
lesser Conquest.
Yeah. That's the closest I've ever come to any kind of PvP. So, although that might change because there's no story in this patch, so I'm gonna level some alts, and then I'm gonna get very, very bored. So I may end up getting into PvP.
Yeah, I'm excited to work on some alts. I started to last night again for a little bit because we're at the point now. It's just kill Sylvanas and then fuck around.
Well, I got very excited this morning, actually, because before I started work, I say before I started work, after I dropped the kids off at school and before I started doing any real work, I logged in just to have a look around. I wanted to check something specifically, and I went to the Stormwind throne room, and Turalyon wasn't there. And so I immediately started, conspiracy theory crafting. And then it turned out that actually, no, I was just phased. So, for other people, Turalyon is there. So for
I was
those
going to say, I went there last night and he was there.
Yeah, so for those of you who do see my tweet, because at the moment it's got something like 50 or 60 likes, because everyone sees it and thinks, oh, this is cool. But yeah, if you look further down in the comments, it's been debunked. I was just having phasing issues. But it was really exciting for about 10 seconds. Yeah. I would have loved it if they'd slipped some story into this patch just to keep things going, but I guess I get why they haven't.
Yeah, I know, what's his face? Ian said that 9.2 is close, but we all know close can mean a month or 6 years.
Well, what I thought was really interesting was what he said about what's coming after 9.2.
Yeah, I'm starting to think we're going to get a 9.3.
I'm thinking we're going to get a 9.25 at least. And then
I think that's almost a guarantee, just because they seem to be on a 0.5 patch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like 9.3, the fact that he basically implied that if I tell you where we're going after 9.2, it's going to spoil 9.2. And that includes even like giving a patch number. And that's interesting to me. Because it makes me think that maybe there's something interesting going on there.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But there's
maybe we'll get a surprise announcement and trailer before our next episode.
I would bet you every penny in my bank account that doesn't happen.
I would take that bet because I've got like 6 pennies in my bank account, so I don't have much to lose.
Well, what I'm thinking is our next episode is going to be recorded at some time in the next 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Now, if they had had an in-person BlizzCon this year, it would have been, last week in November? Normally?
I think it's usually around now because it's before Thanksgiving.
I reckon if we get an announcement at all this year, I reckon it's last week in November. That's my guess.
Could be.
But yeah.
But I think that's about it for this week.
The end is upon you.
It is unlikely that our next bonus episode will be next week, so you guys will probably hear from us again 2 weeks from now with the conclusion.
And probably a week after that.
Yeah. So 2 weeks from now with the thrilling conclusion to the Arthas tale. And then a week after that with a bonus episode, and then a week after that with whatever our next episode topic's going to be.
It's going to be something lighthearted.
Oh, it is.
Not 4 episodes long.
And not too note-heavy, frankly. But yeah, and also because we're going to be running up towards Christmas, which is a scary thing to think about.
Yeah, our next lore episode after finishing Arthas will be kind of right after Thanksgiving, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know, this month's going to get a little complicated to schedule with the bonus episode and all that. We'll figure it out.
We will.
Production meetings, live on air. Quote-unquote live.
So yeah.
Anyways, if you guys want to know where you can find us, you can find me on Twitter at Sarith. You can find Dracoris at Smiting Titan. You can find the show at LFR Wowcast. You can email us at lfrwowpod@gmail.com. And you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/LFRWowcast. And once I said our Twitter handle, I think you got something to talk about. The little giveaway?
Oh, okay, yeah. We've yeah. So we did a giveaway. We did a tweet. What was it? Thursday or Friday last week? Essentially, the day that the news came out about the Blizzard employees' demands being met, I was so very enthused about that I decided to do a little giveaway for the new store mount that has come out. So I basically put a tweet out there and asked all of you guys to let us know your favourite thing about the World of Warcraft. And we got some amazing comments. We got some really good engagement, and it was lovely to see. But the winner, actually, and I can now announce this on air because just this morning he's accepted the win, is our good friend The Conquer. So yeah, he responded with a picture of the new cat that he and his family are getting. And frankly, there was no way that after seeing that cute cat that I couldn't give him the cat mount. So yeah, Conquer won. And I'm actually going to be sending him the mount within about 30 seconds of finishing this Discord call. So yeah, congratulations, Conquer.
Congrats.
And thank you to everybody who responded and shared and what have you and engaged. You know, it's lovely. I will probably do something fairly similar around Christmas, so keep an eye out.
And with that, I think it's time to say bye-bye for the week.
Yep, look after each other, look after yourselves, and go buy the pet if you haven't got it. Go buy the store mount if you haven't got it already, because it's incredibly fucking cute.
All right, bye-bye.
See ya.
I am very uncomfortable with the energy that we've created in the studio today.